All rise for the court. Hear ye, hear ye. The High Court is now in session. The Honorable Dennis Kim presiding. Let all who have matters come forth. May God bless this court.
Please be seated. Well, we certainly have a lot of interest today. Thank you for attending. The matter at hand is the case of the Crown versus Mr. Macbeth. Is the Crown ready to proceed?
Yes, my lord, the crown is ready.
Is the defense ready to proceed?
We are ready, my lord.
Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, when you were selected last week, I gave you specific instruction not to discuss this case with anyone. I now ask, have you had any contact with anyone about this case?
No, my lord.
Good. We are now ready to begin. At this stage of the trial, both sides will have opportunity to address you directly and make an opening statement. An opening statement is a summary of each side's version of what happened. Since the Crown or the government has a burden of proving guilt, the Crown will go first. Mr. Doe, are you ready?
Yes, my lord.
You may proceed.
Thank you, my lord. Good afternoon. My name is June Doe, and I am the Chief Crown Prosecutor. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a photograph of a victim who was a guest at Mr. Macbeth's home when he was brutally murdered. King Duncan's lifeless body was found in the guest bedroom of Mr. Macbeth's home. While he slept, he was brutally killed by a dagger, which was plunged through. On the night that he was murdered, King Duncan had traveled to Mr. Macbeth's home to honor him for his brave military service. The journey had exhausted the king, so he went to bed soon after his arrival. The cowardly person who killed a sleeping, defenseless king is sitting before you. Jurors, during the next few weeks, the Crown will prove that the accused Mr. Macbeth is guilty, as he has both opportunity and the motive to kill the king. As far as opportunity goes, King Duncan was in Mr. Macbeth's home on the night of the murder. Mr. Macbeth obviously had access to his own house and to the guest bedroom where the king slept. And why, you may ask, did Mr. Macbeth want to kill the king? What was his motive? The answer is simple. Mr. Macbeth is a villain who was motivated and corrupted by greed. Greed for power. He wanted to be king. My colleague, Miss Chen, will now explain why the Crown maintains that the crime committed by Mr. Macbeth was a cold-blooded murder.
My lord, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Mr. Macbeth's crime indeed was cold-blooded murder. It was perfectly planned and carefully executed. Mr. Macbeth made sure there were no witnesses, as the king's guards had been drugged with alcohol from Mr. Macbeth's personal bar. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the Crown is confident that after you hear from all the witnesses and see all the evidence, you will be convinced of the defendant's guilt. He really is an evil man. When 3 witnesses told Mr. Macbeth that he would be king, he did not dismiss the idea, even though he knew there already was a king and that this king had 2 sons who would be king after him. Instead, he immediately started to plot to become kings by means of murder. Even after thinking about it and realizing that killing King Duncan would be an unspeakable crime, he still chose to go ahead with it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Macbeth knew exactly what he was doing when he planned and carried out the vicious murder. He knew that King Duncan was a good king, but his desire for power was much bigger than his respect for King Duncan.
No! Order the court! King Duncan!
Order!
I didn't
Order
want
the
to kill
court!
him!
Leave!
I couldn't help myself! I'm so sorry!
Miss Cook, could you please read back the large remarks made by Mr. Doe before he was interrupted by the accused?
Yes, my lord. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Macbeth knew exactly what he was doing when he planned and carried out the vicious murder. He knew that King Duncan was a good king, but his desire for power was much bigger than his respect for King Duncan or for the law.
Thank you, Miss Cook. Mr. Doe, you may continue.
Thank you, my lord. Ladies and gentlemen, the Crown trusts that as the trial proceeds, you will come to only possible conclusion that the accused willfully, maliciously, and knowingly planned and carried out the vicious murder of King Duncan. And we have no doubt that you'll ultimately find that Mr. Macbeth is guilty of the crime of first-degree murder.
Let us take a short recess.
All right!
Mr. Lee, is the defense ready?
Yes, my lord.
You may proceed.
My lord, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Daniel Lee, and I'm the lead defense attorney in this trial. Crown prosecutor, Mr. Doe, tried very hard to convince that the accused, Mr. Macbeth, is an evil and cold-blooded murderer. But in this trial, the defense will show that there could be nothing farther from the truth. We will argue Mr. Macbeth himself was a victim. How so, you may ask? The reason is because Mr. Macbeth was deviously targeted by 3 witches and was also controlled by his evil and domineering wife, Mrs. Macbeth. Mr. Doe is asking you, ladies and gentlemen, to ignore the very forces that manipulated Mr. Macbeth and dictated his actions. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is the prosecution's job to prove that the accused is guilty. So, I don't blame Mr. Doe for trying to put the blame on Mr. Macbeth, but he is dead wrong. You see, ladies and gentlemen, in our criminal code, there's something very, very important called NCR, which stands for not criminally responsible. A person is not criminally responsible for something that he did if he was not in his right mind, or if he was suffering from a mental disorder at the time of the crime, which made it impossible for him to truly understand what he did. Our laws are built on ideas of fairness. We have to examine whether Mr. Macbeth acted freely and was in his right mind when he killed King Duncan. And it is the duty of the prosecution to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he did act freely and rationally. This, I'm sure Mr. Doe cannot do. Ladies and gentlemen, the defense acknowledges that the murder of King Duncan was grotesque and appalling. But in our view, this murderous act is suggestive of a mental disorder. During the next few weeks, the defense will present evidence that demonstrates Mr. Macbeth was unduly influenced by two outside factors. First, three witches who ambushed him on his way back from the battle where he had fought so bravely for King Duncan. And second, his evil and dictatorial wife, Mrs. Macbeth. My esteemed colleague, Mr. will now describe the crucial role that the three witches and Mrs. Macbeth played in the murder of King Duncan.
Good afternoon, my lord, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James and I am one of Mr. Macbeth's lawyers. My client sits here, an innocent man, a victim who was toyed with, hurt, manipulated by outside forces. And the defense maintains that he absolutely fits the criteria for someone who was not criminally responsible for his actions due to mental illness. First, Mr. Macbeth was cruelly deceived and controlled by the witches, so the man who killed King Duncan was not the real Macbeth. The real Macbeth was a good man. He was trusted by everyone, even by King Duncan, who stayed at Mr. Macbeth's house as an overnight guest. The real Macbeth was also a loyal soldier who fought hard in a battle to protect his king. Furthermore, he was respected and loved by his friends and by many other people. If the witches had not targeted him and chosen him to carry out their evil wishes, the idea of killing King Duncan would never have crossed his mind. Ladies and gentlemen, scientific studies have suggest that people who commit heinous crime often have brains that are wired for a crime and generally start doing bad things from their young age. But Mr. Macbeth never did anything bad until after his meeting with the witches. Furthermore, these witches, who had supernatural power, brainwashed Mr. Macbeth, casting a spell on him to make him do unthinkable acts. From the first time they had spoken to him, he was lost. From that time forward, he was under their control. As the trial progresses, you will come to understand that Mr. Macbeth was not in his right mind at the time of the murder, and so cannot be held criminally responsible for it. Mr. Macbeth's actions were also greatly influenced by his domineering and power-hungry wife, Mrs. Macbeth. There is overwhelming evidence that Mr. Macbeth was excessively bullied by his wicked wife. Witnesses will testify about her constant browbeating and humiliation of her husband, often in public. When the accused told her that he could not murder King Duncan because King Duncan was a good king, she mocked him. Over and over again, she called him a wimp and a coward. Her plan was to wear him down, all because she wanted to be queen. Finally, Mr. Macbeth's spirit was broken and he gave in to her evil demands. For these reasons, ladies and gentlemen, the defense contends that Mr. Macbeth was a victim, not a villain. In the weeks ahead, we intend to prove that Mr. Macbeth was in a psychotic state at the time of the murder. He was not rational or mentally whole when he killed King Duncan, and so cannot be found guilty of the crime of murder.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will come to realize in this trial the Crown's case against Mr. Macbeth is weak at best. I now ask you carefully consider everything that is brought before you. And if you have any reasonable doubts, then you give the only possible and the only fair verdict of not guilty.
Let us break for an early supper. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, remember my warning. Do not discuss any aspect of this trial with anyone. The trial will resume at 5:30.
All rise!